realize that this starts on page 244, which means naturally that there's a lot of pages that came before this. Not everything's going to make sense, but that's okay, because just enjoy the golden sound of my voice, not stuttering, hopefully, although I do get a bit freaked out when I read this, so don't be surprised. And you get to hear my British accent, because that is where this particular chapter takes place, in the asylum, which is over there.
Over there.
So, here we go. Dr. Stockill froze mid-step as Madame Mornington lifted the bottle of cyanide. This is how every book should start. Because of you, I have wasted my life in misery, said she, an eerie tranquility having possessed her. Because of you, I have nothing. Because of my own pain, I have hurt others without a thought. But you will never understand this, because you are dead inside. And now, so am I. Madame Mornington raised the bottle to her lips and drank its contents in one swallow. From Dr. Stockill came a high-pitched scream, and he ran to his mother as the bottle crashed to the floor, releasing the overwhelming scent of almonds into the air. As the glass shattered, some of the shards must have flown into his face, for the doctor covered his eyes and fell to his knees. Madame Mornington saw her son's brief incapacitation as her chance to flee the basement, but the doctor was soon on his feet again, and he raced after her, shouting for her to stop. I heard quick, sharp footsteps heading down the tunnel towards the quarantine gate, towards me. It was pitch black, but a light was nearing, and I saw Madame Mornington. She undid the bolt and threw open the gate. I stood before her in utter astonishment. She was breathing hard and could not speak. She clutched at her stomach, her face twisted in agony. Her skin was flushed, and her lips were flecked with foam and blood. Groaning, she lurched forward. The sight was awful. I backed away from her. This was the same woman who had robbed me of my one chance at freedom on that wet London night what seemed a lifetime ago. She had fulfilled the request of a murderer and charged me with madness for wanting to escape such a life. She had locked me inside a house of horrors to die by torture instead. She may not have held the knife, but she was part of this just the same. What could she want with me now? Her body contorted into violent convulsions, but she managed to locate the ward key from within the folds of her heavy gray skirt. She broke the chain that attached the key to her waist and held it out to me. Holding the key that had taunted me for so long, her trembling hand still reached out as though begging me to take it from her, to relieve her of her burden at last. Finally, I managed to move my feet. I stepped towards my headmistress and cautiously accepted the key. She stumbled to the ground, and with her dying breath came the hoarse whisper, "Run away." Her body writhed upon the dirt floor, and with one final convulsion and a harsh scrape sounding from deep within her throat, I knew that Madame Mornington was dead. But the ward key, it was in my hand. It was actually in my hand. I took up the dead woman's lantern and raised the key to the flame. Liberty, it called to me. Then, noise from somewhere in the building roused me into action. I knew that Dr. Stockill was hunting for his mother. It was only a matter of time before he would find her, and I must be gone when he did. Past the open gate, I flew as fast as I could through the tunnel, emerging from the hearth, my soggy feet sliding into the entrance hall. One of our hideous gray ghosts flew in front of my face, cavernous eyes wide, the gaping black hole of its mouth forming the word "Run!" as a piercing shriek from all corners of the asylum echoed the same, rising in volume as I raced onward. Grasping the ward key ever tighter in my hand, I bolted up several flights of rickety stairs, only just avoiding my own demise as the rotting wood snapped beneath me and the rattle of unseen machinery. I knew that Dr. Stockill was securing the asylum. Still screaming for his mother, the doctor ran through the endless rooms, the sound of breaking glass and toppling furniture following him as he went. Surviving the staircase, I reached the barred landing of the lunatic ward. I fit the key into the lock and turned it. That old familiar click, and I was in. Once through the vault, I unlocked the doors of both wards, and from a nail on the wall outside of each, took out the 2 rings of smaller keys used by the chasers to lock us into our individual cells and fetters. I began with Ward B, for I knew that it would take more time to free the chained cage than it would to loose the girls in the less confining ward. With the ward key between my teeth, I unlocked cell W14 and tossed one of the rings to the captain, giving her instructions to free every last inmate and to be quick about it. I repeated the procedure in Ward A, and within seconds, a flood of girls and the rats who had been guarding them came pouring out of the wards and onto the landing. I flew to the gate, an army of little girls and the entire league of plague rats behind me when, in the midst of this chaotic muddle of stockings, claws, and tails, I stumbled and fell flat onto my stomach. I watched helplessly as the key launched itself from my hand, shooting away like a bullet across the filthy floor towards the open gate and out of my reach. Time stopped. I was back in the gilded foyer of Bainbridge, and Anne was sliding the master key across the marble floor, but then it had been coming closer, and now it was moving further away. And then a black-shod foot came down, stopping the key and concealing it from my view. I raised my head to see Dr. Stockhill towering above me, a seething fury in his red-rimmed eyes. Without a word, the doctor snatched up the key and turned back towards the gate. Instantly, I was on my feet again, and before I knew what I was doing, I lunged at the doctor, leaping onto his back and sinking my teeth into his arm in an attempt to get back the key I was determined not to lose. The mass of inmates and rodents rushed forward to my aid, but my emaciated limbs were no match for my opponent. He had pocketed the ward key and now shook me off, pulling me close in front of him, my back pressed against his chest and his hand clenched around my throat just as he had done to Christelle. With his free hand, he reached into his breast pocket and drew out a gleaming silver fleam, snapping it open and holding it to my neck. The doctor had transformed into something so contrary to the refined portrait his guests were greeted with when they first crossed the entrance hall downstairs. He was a different creature entirely, a wild, rabid, snarling beast. "What is she worth to you?" he growled, his blade already carving a shallow line across my neck. Seeing the blood, my army stood down. With a demonic cackle, the doctor shoved me back into the crowd and ran out and back down the stairs, locking the gate behind him. It was unbearable. We had come so close, and now we were further away than ever. For within moments, the staff would be alerted to our escape attempt, and we would be done with, once and for all. It was over. All these years of holding on, and it was over. I sank to the ground knowing that we were all dead. I believe that most of the girls were too astounded to completely comprehend what had just happened. All they knew is that we were almost free, and then we weren't. I cannot understand what happened next, diary. I can only tell my story and allow you to come to your own conclusion. As I knelt upon that cold stone floor, I became aware of a peculiar burning sensation upon my right leg. It took me a moment to realize that the heat was coming from inside my stocking. Excuse me. We might as well just talk for one moment about the noise. I would say that it is bothersome. However, this is kind of what it sounds like in the asylum anyway. So it adds slightly more realism to the occasion, and I don't mind if you don't. So.
Okay, I know them.
I tore off the stocking and untied the key as quickly as I could.
I know.
The metal was glowing white hot now, but it did not pain me. I took the key in my hands and felt my pulse quicken, the blood coursing through me. I was a frozen body thawing back to life. Then, I was filled with a lightness that lifted me from the ground onto my feet. I did not walk to the gate. The master key pulled me there. I tried the lock. It fit perfectly. I turned the key, and the gate swung open. My fellow inmates were completely silent. All breaths were held, and nobody made a sound. Then, the great clock in the entrance hall below struck the hour. 4 o'clock, I said. Tea time. And the next chapter begins with the words, blood was everywhere. Thank you.